Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited about the panel. I'm Laura Jones, and on behalf of the Comic-Con Museum, I'm excited to welcome you to this afternoon's program, Artistry and Merchandising. There'll be time towards the end of the panel discussion to take questions, so please submit your answers at any point during the program using Zoom's Q&A function, and we'll do our best to ask the panelists as many of your questions in the time remaining. We're also joined by ASL interpreter Julie Pickering. As a reminder to our panelists, please maintain a steady speaking pace so our ASL interpreter can keep a pace with you. Hi, everybody. Here we are, we're ready to start. And if everybody wants to introduce themselves, that would be great. If we can start with Aviva, since she's the closest on the screen.
Sure. Hi, I'm Aviva Maï Artzy. I'm a traditional freelance artist, model, and I founded the Washi Station, which is an online washi store. And my pronouns are she, her. And this is Luna. She was in my promotional photo and she's here
now. And Yoshi?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Yoshi Yoshitani. I'm an illustrator and concept artist. I've done work for publishers and also work on my own. So I think the biggest thing that I've published recently is the Tarot of the Divine. And I'm also working on covers with Vault. And personal work, I've made jackets, t-shirts, prints, lots of different types of merchandise.
And Gigi?
Hi, I'm Gigi Knight. And I'm a freelance illustrator. I predominantly produce body positive art of women, and I like to mix the cute and macabre together. I'm just trying to produce things I'd like to see in the world and things I would have seen growing up. Product-wise, I mainly produce art prints, stickers, enamel pins, apparel, tote bags, and I'm just trying to expand this year now that I have more experience under my belt.
And Huda?
Hi, I always forget who I am after listening to everyone else's intros because you guys sound so amazing and you do such amazing things. And I'm like, what do I do? I am a webcomic artist. I have published 2 books and I am publishing my 3rd coming out this fall. I mostly draw webcomics. I sell my books from my own shop along with, see, I forgot. I'm like, oh my God. I'm so nervous. I sell hijabs that are, I guess, the same kind of hijabs that my characters wear, and a bunch of other stuff that I guess we can get into, but mostly just, you know, cute, fun things that are related to my webcomics, which are about Muslims and hijabi women living in America and the quirky, not so quirky things that happen to us.
And Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen Bartel. I am a comic artist and commercial illustrator. I'm mostly known for doing covers for kind of a wide range of comics. And yeah, I've been doing product design and selling merchandise for about 4 years now.
Sina?
Hi, my name is Sina Grace. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a comic book writer and illustrator. I've done work for pretty much every publisher, Marvel, DC, but currently doing a book at Image Comics called Getting It Together. And I've done a lot of work for musicians, which has helped me sort of evolve and grow my own web store where I sell all sorts of things, including car fresheners. Anyway.
That smell great. That smell great. So I think this year, especially, whereas a lot of artists and creators are used to going to cons and selling prints and things like that, it's been really a big challenge to sort of diversify and offer sort of online offerings, including how you might go about doing that. And so if someone wants to create a new product, what do you think is the first step to creating it? Is it just all artistic ideas, or do you kind of have to think through the logistics first? Anyone feel free to answer.
I mean, I guess one of the things that I start thinking about when I'm creating a product is kind of what I would like and also what fits with what I'm creating already. I've definitely had conversations with other people before where they will start creating something that they're like, I think that this is something that other people want. And I ask them, well, do you want this product that you're making? And a lot of times I'll have people be like, well, actually, no, I don't think I would buy this thing that I'm making. And I'm like, well, then why are you making it? So definitely consider like, what is it that you actually want yourself, and then start making for that. Definitely a thing I think about.
To bounce off that and also talk about Jen, who's on this panel, I'm like doing the Brady Bunch pointing. It was in quarantine that I just saw all of Jen's like really cool Tifa drawings from Final Fantasy VII, and you know, it's like I just was like, I want anything of this, like make postcards, make whatever, and that sort of evolved into how I had to think about myself and sort of how I can, you know, make things that I wanted to own. I became a major Taylor Swift fan in quarantine, and I was like, well, she doesn't make postcards, and I'm sending out a lot of postcards trapped at home. So, you know, one of the things I did was like, I just decided to make postcards of her, and similarly, her web store didn't have pins, so I took like a very long time to like make a pin that like I'd want to own. And yeah, just sort of basically everything Yoshi said, but with more detail, with my own context.
So I wanted to add to that as well is I have been wanting like a pop socket for my phone. And so I went to the pop socket website to see if I would like it. So that was one thing that, you know, I started before I even looked into whether or not this was something that was feasible in terms of like, will it even make sense financially to, you know, how much they cost, how much shipping costs, how much time it's going to take, how much would I have to sell them for to even, you know, break even? Would people even pay that much for something with like such a silly thing on it, you know? And then do I like the quality? So that's something that I do after I pass the point of, yes, this is something I want or I would buy. And then I start going into like the research of it, because it takes so much. Like I've never thought how much it actually takes to sell a product, and really as much as I want it out there, it's like, does this make sense feasibly financially? Even it's so much harder, you know, than it looks to do. So I'm still on the fence. I don't even know if I want to offer those because I don't know if people would buy them.
So has there ever been a product that you wanted to sell that just didn't make sense, or that it was just going to be, you know, you just kind of couldn't get it together?
I mean, I guess for me, that was part of the things I love about Kickstarter or other fundraising platforms is, I mean, when I was initially making my tarot deck, I thought that I was going to be self-publishing that, and realizing just how much money I was going to have to raise to try and figure out how that worked. Like, I didn't know if there was going to be enough demand. Also, the price point that I was probably going to have to sell it at was just going to be so huge. I was like, I have so many questions. I don't know how to do this, which is why I actually did my first Kickstarter was just raising money for enamel pins. And with enamel pins, like, you know, if you order a small enough quantity, it's pretty cheap, relatively speaking. It was something that I realized I can pay for this out of pocket if I completely mess up. So I was like, here, I'll start off small. I'll learn all my lessons through Kickstarter this way. And the Kickstarter was super successful. I learned a lot of things. Definitely learned that shipping is so expensive and accounts for so much of the budget. Not only getting the products to me, but then shipping out to individuals is just, it's so much more money than you think it is. And even worse when you're trying to ship internationally, which is super disappointing when you realize, oh, here's this cute like $10 enamel pin and it's going to cost $15 to ship to Canada. And that is awful. I feel really bad about that. But I mean, learning those lessons on a smaller thing like an enamel pin versus trying to scale up to bigger products. And again, like seeing if there is demand, you know, like when I was making my jackets, I didn't know if there was going to be enough demand to justify how many jackets I wanted to make. So it was really nice to have Kickstarter to do that buffer, so I didn't have to spend like 90K of my own money to make that. Instead, it's like, okay, cool. Everyone has decided that they want this to happen. They're paying me ahead of time, so to speak. And everyone is like very willing to wait a year for this production cycle. So thanks to everyone who supported that.
So yeah, that brings up a good point about pre-ordering. Like Aviva, you had people pre-order for the washi tapes. Did you find that was something helpful? And did you sort of do overages or something like that to make sure that you could meet that demand?
Yeah, on a smaller scale than Yoshi, it definitely was a lot of money to put down for a product for the first time for me. And so sorry, Laura, your pre-order is in a box in the hallway waiting to be picked up by a courier. So if the doorbell rings during this call, that's what it is. I think it's a great idea starting off. This was the first collection for the washi station. And so pre-orders are, I guess there's stages of everything. Doing a Kickstarter is a huge undertaking. I've not done one, but I feel safe just saying that. Yoshi, can you confirm? Yeah. So, and just starting an online shop at all is a big undertaking. Even when it's on a smaller scale, there's a lot of things to consider. I keep getting this Squarespace ad, which I use Squarespace, and they're like, start your online shop in just 9 easy steps. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. 9 is so many steps, even if they were easy. So with the pre-orders, yeah, that was like, at least if it was gonna bomb horribly, I'd be like, okay, well, I can do damage control and I will see what happens. And it went really well and I was really excited. And then I actually have decided for like future collections that I'm not going to do pre-orders because I feel like I made enough from that first collection to move forward, because it was stressing me out that the manufacturer, who I had used multiple times before and had always been like really on time with their estimates, was like 3 weeks late this time. So I was just like biting my nails. So I can't imagine that for a year. Thank you, Luna. But yeah, it was, I think, the right choice, because there was that panic of like, what if no one wants this? And that way I wasn't out several $1,000s.
I think one of the biggest things is learning, you as an artist. I mean, I'm not an artist, but I can see that a lot of people I talk to, they undervalue their work, and you don't maybe charge what really is worth it, or you don't consider your time. Does anybody have any advice for artists starting out or even more established about really saying that what I have done has value? And how does that something you get over if we talk about imposter syndrome a lot, like feeling like what you have to offer is really worth the money?
I'd like to hear this answer too, so someone tell me. I'm listening.
Yoshi, that's your cue.
That first bit, undervaluing your work, like I can tell y'all right now, I used to sell commissions for 35 American dollars, and they were full body portrait commissions. So they had to not only be full body, but bear the likeness of a client. And that was hours of work for 35 American dollars. But what I could tell any creator watching, any artist watching, is that you deserve at least minimum wage wherever you live. And it doesn't matter if you don't feel the right to charge that, but even if you think of yourself as someone who is just learning or a hobbyist, you deserve minimum wage. You're putting in the effort, you're putting in the work, you're putting in the time, and someone wants what you're making. So you might as well make your cut and still, make what you need to live, essentially. If you're selling your craft, like at least have the decency of accurately taking into account just how long it takes you to do something. And that includes the parts that you spend emailing a client, negotiating any changes, and even pad it an extra 10%, because you're probably not taking into account the materials and other miscellaneous costs that like come with creating something. And if there's one lesson that I really tried to share with like any artist or hobbyist, is that You don't want the people that are looking to pay you pennies. You don't want the people who are thinking cheap. You're gonna want the one client that's willing to pay you a couple hundred, even maybe $1,000, because they're gonna be worth 3 to 5, even 10 of the cheap clients. And you're saving your time. You're leaving your valuable time open to do other things that, you know, that you're gonna need to do to keep growing, you know, practice marketing yourself, finding your next big paying client, social media, and like all the other hats you wear as a creator and a small business owner.
I would say too, for people who are feeling either a level of imposter syndrome, or they don't think their product is like worth the amount of money of, you know, say someone hyper established and, you know, doing art for Entertainment Weekly. I don't know. You can always start at what you think you're worth. And then if the sales aren't adding up, or, you know, people aren't buying the commissions, you can then, you know, very briefly try like a flash sale. So then you can find out where the number is that people are, you know, willing to spend with your sort of your place in the freelance illustrator world. That way because like there was someone I saw at DragCon, and I thought their art was cool, but I would say they were pricing things about like 40% more than I'd be willing to pay. Like it would be like a zine would be $15, and it's 12 pages and it's printer paper. It's not like it was risograph printing or anything. And, you know, that was one of those things where I was like, I wish we were close enough that I could tell you need to like mark that down $5. That's why it's not moving. You know, but that person hopefully at some point, you know, tried a sale and then was like, oh, this is where the sweet spot is. This is where I'm getting, you know, paid what I'm worth, but not getting paid so little. I don't know, that could be wrong. If anyone disagrees with me, please disagree with me and tell me that's wrong so I can never say it again.
Yeah, so obviously I agree with everything that was said already, but the one thing I do want to touch on is profit margins. So when you're dealing with physical product and when you're ordering certain quantities, it's really, it kind of boils down to pretty simple math. You need to make a profit on what you're selling. And for me, generally, I like to keep that profit margin somewhere between, generally it's not considered a good margin if it dips below 50%. So you want to avoid that at all costs. I like to stay within the 70 to 80% range if possible. So for example, if I'm ordering enamel pins, and if each pin costs me $2 to produce, then that means in order to maintain an 80% profit margin, I need to sell each pin for $10. Otherwise, that profit ends up becoming a little bit too small to actually be worth my time. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're doing actual merchandise.
Yeah, I also want to say on that percentage, if you're selling items like wholesale, which is a thing that I do with, you know, sometimes prints, selling them in galleries, or also these jackets, it is really, really, really important that you're selling it at 4 times the amount minimum of what it took to produce. Because when you're wholesaling something, you're selling it at 50% of what it retails at, because again, like the gallery or the shop or wherever you're selling it from, they also need to make a profit. So, you know, if something took $10 to produce, you want to at least wholesale it for $20 and then have it be marketed at $40. But I mean, again, like you're hoping in that instance, you're hoping that you're making most of your sales through yourself, and then like a smaller portion is wholesale through someone else. And yeah, again, you got to make sure that those numbers actually work out for you, because if they're not, then you shouldn't be making the product.
A question came in that was similar to something I was going to ask, which is how do you keep up with fulfillment of large scale projects like Kickstarters or pre-orders? Do you have a specific workflow? And they also want to know if it involves crawling in a ball and regretting life decisions, asking for a friend. So yeah, if anyone has any comments on how they workflow, or, if Aviva said she's packing it up herself, that's very different than if you have a fulfillment center or something like that.
Yes, having just packed up like 300 orders this week. I shared this Instagram reel today, and it was just like the expectation of having a studio, and the reality was a girl just like walking over a bunch of boxes. I felt seen by that. I think it really depends on who you are and what works best for you. I was talking to a friend who came and helped me with them, and there are all these like cute small business Instagram videos up like, pack an order with me. And I'm like, that's adorable. If I packed orders like that, this would have taken me a month. I think you have to kind of like batch things out, find what works for you, like pack all the orders, then print all the labels or lay them all out and make sure everything's right at once and do things in steps. And also like mix it up so you don't give yourself a repetitive stress injury from doing the same exact tearing off the label liner motion 100 times in a row.
So this, no, go ahead, sorry.
I just have one more thing, which is just that there are also, you were asking about specifically doing it yourself, because there are obviously people who can do fulfillment for you as well. I actually do fulfillment for like a friend's shop at the same time. And I feel like there's one really big company that multiple people here maybe use who could also do that. Yeah.
So this is actually a really good piece of information too, to give to people watching, is like, I only make merch that fits within like the 2 to 3 envelopes I've like mass ordered from Mailers USA. And also there's like a comic box shipping company that I forgot what they're called, but anyway, and so that's another way to kind of keep your process streamlined and keep your costs down, because then you can bulk order mailers for a fraction of the cost of going to like Staples or Target or wherever, and you don't have to go to Uline. Apparently Uline is owned by some problematic folks. Mailers USA, I don't know if they're problematic, but I'm gonna just pretend they're not. Or assume they're not. But anyway, yeah, you just kind of gotta like set yourself up and go, okay, like I imagine I'm gonna be shipping this many orders. So like what work can I do to like prevent the stress of it? And with like, when I had these variant covers that I put on my web store to just try and like do something cool and new, I just basically like pre-folded the boxes like the night before, just watching the Queen's Gambit, doing that. And I was like watching her be a chess genius. And I was like, I'm a comic web store genius. I'm gonna be amazing. I'm fantastic. Yeah, so music and Netflix are very helpful for when you're dealing with your own web store fulfillment.
Yes. All right, you mentioned like mailers, which is like a keyword that activates me. That's super smart. Make things that all fit in similar size packaging. Also, like, it's worth shopping around to find what works. Obviously, bulk buying stuff, everyone gets the benefit of, yeah, you get a lot of them for cheap, but also you have a lot of them. So do you have a lot of things to sell, or are these going to last you until 2023? It's worth checking things. Like, I have this seller, I think I'm the only one who's in Canada, and I feel like most of the viewers probably are in the United States as well. But one company that's in the US, which I love, is Eco Enclose, because they are super environmentally friendly. And that's something that I think about with everything that I make. I'm sorry, Julie, I just looked at you and was like, I'm gonna speak slower. Yeah, so I really recommend Eco Enclose because they offer all kinds of stuff. Like you can get an individual free sample. You can buy things in packs of 10. You can buy things in packs of 100 for a different price point. And everything there is like, they're really transparent about their environmental impact of their mailers. So I use essentially the same mailers that they have, but I buy them here in Canada, not from Uline, not from Staples, but I just found another site called 123ink.ca, which is a like wholesaler, and you can buy things, you can buy them in quantities of 10 for the same price as if they were in quantities of 100, which, yeah, doesn't matter for me. But if you were starting a store and you're like, what am I gonna do with 100 of these mailers? You never know. There are options, and most things that you might just like assume that everyone's like, oh, well, everyone uses Uline or everyone uses Eco Enclose. You can do a little bit of research and probably find another equally good, if not better option.
And that's true. And that's a point about storage, because Huda, you were saying you sell all the books yourself, and I mean, I assume that then that means they're somewhere in your house and you have to have room for that, right?
So I do have my publishers that sell the books as well, but I do offer them. And yeah, they're pretty much, you know, it's not elegant. I was laughing at what Aviva was saying, those Instagram videos of the cute packing, and it's so glamorous and sparkly. And no, mine's literally in my closet, just like shoved in there. And I just order them myself whenever I do like a big push for them. But I have several ways that I sell them. So, I mean, in addition to my publishers selling them on their own, yeah, I do have my own little inventory as well. If the people want to directly support me. But yeah, it's, I think having just kind of a routine, or, you know, just having that little assembly thing that you go through watching the Queen's Gambit or whatever, and doing it is great. And that's helpful, very helpful for sure. But I have a question for the panelists. Have you ever created something or have merchandise that just never sold? And if you did, like, what do you do with it? Asking also for a friend, just curious.
Skips. Sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, you can go, Sina.
So it didn't not sell, but it didn't make my money back. I made something that I thought would be really cool. I did a variant cover for my book with Kim Joy from the Great British Bake Off. And I, you know, I have it right here, but she baked this cover. This is that's food, that's biscuit and fondant and whatnot. And I just thought it was going to be the coolest thing on earth. And I thought everyone was going to love it. And I also paid Kim Joy, you know, what she's worth. And at the end of the day, I did not turn a profit. But I feel like when you take that kind of risk, you have to do it for another reason besides making money. I knew it was a gamble, but I just also knew that no one else in the comic book industry was going to have a baked comic book cover. So I just thought, okay, like that's the value. Is I got like a really cool press article with the Hollywood Reporter. You know, I got Kim Joy and her fans talking about this book. So if you're going to make a risk, you have like that, and you really think you're not going to make money or you're going to lose money, then there should be some other value to it, like marketing, or, you know, just expanding the number of eyes that are on you. Obviously, I did a Star is Born pin, a Lady Gaga Bradley Cooper pin that I did think was going to sell like 1 million, and it didn't. But I like, pins are like Jen said, like you can sort out very quickly how to like make that not lose you a ton of money. So I wasn't too heartbroken that I just barely broke even on a pin that I thought was going to sell like gangbusters. But when any of that happens, you then have this thing that you can just use to go promote yourself and give away. If it's like flatlined within your sort of your pool of money making, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I've had certain like pins and just certain products that, you know, they didn't sell out, or I didn't sell through like what I thought I would, and I had ordered too much. And I've run like various events where, you know, like if you order over a certain amount, you'll get like free items. And a lot of the time those free items are things that didn't sell. Sorry to give that secret away. You just find uses for them, because ultimately, you know, even if they're not making you money, like Sina said, they could be used for marketing or promotion, or just like order add-ons. There's a lot of different uses.
Fan goodwill, there we go. Like building goodwill with fans. Like that's sort of the other way of being able to like free gift with purchase. Because those people come back and they remember you and they like you, and it becomes personal, you know?
I think that's the very useful side of it. I also think that how often is the item that you thought was going to do really well, but then doesn't, something that like you really care about? Because then you're like, well, at least I made something that I really care about. Like I had, oh, hello, these cards that I made that I really wanted to do. They're little affirmation cards. They have like a raised spot glass. Let me see. There we go. Hey. I love them so much. They were very expensive. I knew they were going to be. I was like, I didn't think that I was going to sell a ton of them. So I waited for a sale. I did what I could and they did okay. But regardless of how they did financially, they were part of of a bigger launch. And now I've like reused them. I'm using them for postcards as well, because I think they work really well for that. And thank you, Luna. And I just think they're really beautiful and I'm glad that they exist. And I don't give them out as free gifts because they were expensive, but I give them to friends.
I'll also say that sometimes it's about how the particular item is like marketed. I've also noticed sometimes that the thing that sells the least, it's because it doesn't really match anything else of my brand. It's like something that's just like a little outside of the loop. And so it's something that, maybe people come to my store, they're expecting like a certain sort of item, they're expecting a certain sort of vibe. And then this is the thing that's just like a little outside that vibe. So it's not that people don't like it. It's just the people who are coming to me specifically for things. That's just not the item that they were looking for. So sometimes I've had successes where, maybe I'll make a few more items to kind of match that item. You have to be careful there because it's a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy where you're like, oh, if I just pour more money in this pit, maybe it'll come back. So be careful there. But I've definitely had success with it in the past where I'm like, well, if I give people a little more context for this item and say like, hey, here's this thing, but here are a few more things about it. I've had like successes there. Actually, for a specific example, I had these enamel pins that were on a chain and I made 6 different types of them. And the one that sold the least was a one with a kitsune mask and a little drum on the side. That one by far was like the least, the worst seller. But it got me thinking like, well, what if I made like a whole bunch of art with like kitsune masks? Like, what if I thought about it that way? And so I actually made a whole art book for that. And people really like the art book. People really like the art in that. And so it's been able to like recontextualize like, hey, here's the art book, but here's also kind of an enamel pin that also has that vibe that kind of matches that. And so that's like helped people sort of recontextualize like why they might enjoy that pin. But again, like I said, be careful with that. Like don't put like years of your life into trying to save one product. So, but it's a way to think about it.
And that kind of goes into, we got a question from Meg who wanted to know how important is social media in all of your merchandise and being able to sell kind of tools like that.
Well, now that we're in a global pandemic, I would say that social media is probably more important than ever before, but I do think there are ways to kind of get around that. I know that for a lot of you who have done Kickstarters, I think like a huge benefit of being on Kickstarter is that you gain additional visibility, even if you don't have a massive social media following.
Oh, I don't care. You speak.
Sorry, I'll just even say that like in terms of social media, I've even had luck with that in terms of traditional publishing. For better or worse, when I had my tarot deck and it was being potentially picked up by a publisher, one of the stats they really wanted to see was like, how many people follow you on social media? And that definitely affected like the offers that I got. And I also, but I mean, like, if you don't want to be on social media, one of the other numbers that I offered to them was I had a mailing list that people could sign up for updates about the tarot deck specifically. And so I was able to go to my publisher and say like, hey, this is the number of people who have specifically signed up for my mailing list that want this deck now. And that was also like really beneficial. So, like there are ways to kind of get around social media, again, by using like riding off of other successes like Kickstarter. I would say that I don't have a lot of people who, like, I have a number of followers who only follow me on Kickstarter. Like, they're not on any of the other platforms. They're just there for that. So you can use like Kickstarter, so you can write off of things like that. You can have like mailing lists. When conventions were a thing, you could be just a convention person. I would say that the number of people who saw me only at conventions and like were never online, like I had a lot of like a 2 separate group situation happening there. So there are ways to get around social media, but it is super powerful and you can't ignore that either.
Do you guys find that it's just Instagram and Twitter, or are there other social media platforms that have been helpful for this?
I found that my Facebook really blew up, which was crazy because I agonized, I think at least over 5 years on a Facebook business page. And, you know, I would get a share here and a like here. And it came to a point where I was like, is it worth it to even continue uploading to this social media? It feels so dead. And I don't know what happened from one year to the next. I went from like a couple of thousand people that like my page, and most of those were friends, to over 200,000, 300,000. And it was wild. And not all of them like the page, but they follow the page. So they still get the updates that are happening on that page. And because that page has that
That's
traction,
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. But because that page has that traction, anything I share, guaranteed on average 2,000 likes and 200 to 500 shares per post. So that to me has been doing even better than Instagram or Twitter or Tumblr or any other social media platform that I find myself on trying to market myself. And that was literally just the agony of time and putting in the work, even though it didn't feel like it was doing anything. And that is generally just what social media is, like putting in the work, as much as it feels like, oh, no one's looking, no one's liking. The thing that happens with social media is you start to link your self-worth with the number of likes that you're getting. And that is just gonna kill your creativity, kill your spirit, kill anything that made the thing that you were doing fun, which is the whole point of why you're doing it, because you love it and because it's something that, you know, it speaks to you on a soul level, which is not everything speaks to you that way. But there's just so many ways to grow with social media. They all work in different combinations. Sometimes it's, you know, the luck of having some big person share your stuff. Sometimes it's the luck of something you did was really cool and like Gizmodo or some sort of big publisher picks it up and does a small article on it. And sometimes it's just word of mouth, people sharing your work around, showing it to friends, and they're like, this person does cool stuff, you would really enjoy it. And that person shares it with 3 friends, and so on and so forth. And I see Yoshi, you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, just riding off of that too, like, especially because this is like about merchandising, be super careful about social media, because just because this item is liked the most does not mean it will sell at all. Like, there's I have art that I'll make that will get like basically no likes, like it'll get nothing. I'm like, well, okay, I guess no one liked it. But you know, I go sell it online or at conventions and it is my #1 seller. And I don't know why. Like, just there's absolutely no correlation. None at all.
Like, sometimes your best seller at one show won't be your best seller at a different show too, because it depends on demographics and location, and there's just a lot of factors.
I actually did a poll on Instagram when I was trying to look at customer validation for a plushie for one of my characters. And I was like, would you pay this much money for this plushie? And it was like over 1,000 people said yes, something like that. I was like, I know y'all are lying, because when I sold this thing for less than that, none of you bought it. And so I was like, it's just be careful. Just be careful. You're going to see these numbers. It's so easy to press yes. And it's so easy to get like your hopes up and stuff. And so I agree with Yoshi. Just be very careful.
I mean, this goes back to what we were saying before about like why you have to price your stuff at like 80% profit, because that is a buffer for all the failures you're definitely going to have. So if you're like, oh, cool, like I got a $1 profit on this item, well, great, but the next item is going to give you a negative 500. So, you know, try and build the buffer for yourself.
That is the toughest lesson any artist learns, gauging audience interest correctly. Because sometimes you'll pose an idea and the interest seems to be there, so you go for it and you sink that money in and you're like, yes, I'm gonna just rake those dollars back in, gonna reel it in. And then everyone who said yes is gone and you're standing there buried in your own merch, a throne of sadness, and you're just like, great, this is beautiful. I guess I'll, you know, build a fire pit or something in the backyard and find something to do with all this merch that clearly
just repost it on Facebook, Gigi.
I know, now I just gotta repost it on Facebook.
As a general rule for myself, and this wasn't something that I was very like deliberate or strict about, but just generally speaking, I have never asked my audience for their opinion. I find that it's not, it never really helps determine like whether or not something will sell. I find that a lot of creators who ask for like opinions, who take polls or, you know, put like process images even of like what they're about to order. A lot of the time it just ends up resulting in more confusion even. So I think having like a trusted group of peers or friends that you can like confide in and ask for advice from, I think that's much more important. And asking like a wide audience, those people don't know what they want. You'll tell them what they want later.
Yeah, I think about sometimes, and this is a little bit off topic, but when I used to work in the games industry, we would have people kind of review the game as we were working on it to try and get user feedback, which again, you have to be really careful of. Like, I remember one time we were making a really soft emotional game that was about like decluttering your house and gaining friends, and like it was very, very soft. Like I can't explain to you how soft it was.
That's so cute.
It was very adorable. I'm very glad to have worked on it. But yeah, we got some guy came in and his feedback was add flamethrowers. And it's like, I don't know what to say to you. Like you're like, okay, cool. Like flamethrowers are awesome. They are cool. They would work really well in another game, but not this game. So, you know, be careful with feedback. You know, if we had added flamethrowers, that would have completely broken the ambiance and the vibe of the game and what we were going for. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt.
And flamethrowers.
Yeah, I think as Jen was saying, it's easier to have like a trusted group that you're like, okay, what is your feedback? what do you have to add to this? You're less likely to get these weird oddball.
Sorry, Laura, I want to say something too. I would say to like the original question of the importance of social media, I don't think I would have a career, especially in the past. Like I have switched to being freelance in the past year. I don't think I would have any luck or success or one sale without Twitter and Instagram. But I will also say like I have a much more modest following than most of the other panelists. And I even, you know, kind of like Gigi, I feel like I've just had the same amount for like 5 years. Sometimes I look at a post from 2014. I'm like, why does this have more likes? Whatever. You can't do it for the likes. You have to do it because you enjoy it and because you want to share what you're doing with other people and put that out there. But in the same way that all of us are like, you never really know what's going to do well. Okay. So here's the collection, the first collection of the Washi Station, all 20 tapes. And they're beautiful. And they are from, so I did 2 tapes and then the other 18 are from, I think 14 or 15 other independent artists. So it's all different artists in different but cohesive styles and with different size followings. And sometimes you think like, I'm thrilled with all of the designs we put out. I think they all look great and I'm really proud of them. And I really love the art. Bless you, Luna. But there's no way to tell. Some people are like, have huge followings. And I was like, for sure. And the best selling one I'm going to give her a shout out. The best selling tape in our whole collection, I'm sorry about the sound, is this chicken tape. Let's see if I can successfully do influencer hand, which is amazing. It's little like cottagecore chickens. And that one is the best selling one. And it's from an artist named Riley's Desk, who has like under 2,000 followers. So you don't know. This is the opposite of like, it's the chickens, but they're all great. The same way you could be like, everyone loves this, it's gonna do really well. The opposite could be true. It could be like, people don't know me, but they love this thing that I'm making. You don't know. And
oh, sorry.
Similar to what you were saying, Jen, about being like, don't post, are you gonna buy this? Don't post, here's what I'm working on. It's like, it's so hard because you wanna share and be excited about it. But I was talking to my partner about this and I was like, okay, I'm gonna announce the collection and then I'm gonna open pre-orders in a week. And he was like, why don't you just open pre-orders now? Like the people who are excited for the announcement are gonna forget. Just open. I was like, you know what, you're right. And then I like stressed a little and then like 4 hours later, I was like, pre-orders are open. There you go.
People will get fatigued if you talk about it too much. There's only kind of like a set number of posts that people are willing to actually engage with, I think. And yeah, I just wanted to comment on like the social media numbers thing, because I think, you know, we've all clearly stated that social media is indeed important and extremely valuable, but at the same time, there's like this story about an influencer that came out like, I don't know, I think it was like 3 years ago. She had like 2 million followers on Instagram and she couldn't sell 32 t-shirts. Or maybe those weren't the exact numbers, but anyway, she had a massive following and she couldn't sell a very tiny number of t-shirts based on like what you would expect from a following that size. And so I think one thing to keep in mind is it's not really so much about how many followers you have, it's much more about what kind of followers you have. And the work that you can do to build your social media presence that's most valuable is building a following of people who actually are interested in supporting you and aren't just like passive viewers.
I've definitely talked about that with a bunch of artist and illustrator friends, that I would rather have an audience of 2,000 to 5,000 people that cared than 1 million or 2 million or 3 million or anything beyond that. Like it won't matter in the long run, because like Jen brought up, if you have 2 million followers and no one's going to support you, then what do you have? You're standing in a ghost town.
Oh, that imagery. May I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
I used to work as an editor for the Walking Dead comics. And when we were working on an art of Charlie Adlard book, that was the guy that drew 100 zillion issues of that book. I got this interesting like factoid about his history where he drew the X-Files comic in the 90s. And he said that like when the book was coming out and he would go and do signings, like because he was the closest thing to like anything official with the brand for a lot of fans, he was like, I was like the Beatles, like at these signings, you know? I mean, this was the 90s and it was a different time and comic book sales were different. But the minute he was off the book, he couldn't get a job. No one gave a crap about him. And he couldn't get a job. And then he got The Walking Dead and things picked up. But, you know, that's the problem too of like, if you're liaising off of like something pre-established, like those fans are going to be the fans of the thing. And when you're not associated with the thing, then they're not gonna like necessarily want to continue following you. And that's why it goes back to like what Gigi was saying, where, you know, you want the people who sort of like care about the you in your art, because those folks will stick around and they'll they'll pick up what you're putting down a lot better than, you know, say like a Batman fan, and then you're telling that Batman fan you made a cookbook. An illustrated cookbook, sorry, keeping it within this topic.
I just wanted to say that we have about 10 minutes left, so if anybody has any questions, to drop them in the Q&A. But I also wanted, that really brought up something I wanted to ask about too, is about like the sort of like your dedicated fans. I know that Gigi, you have like a very successful Patreon. And if anybody wants to talk about that, because I think that is something new and emerging as a way for people to can support the artists, but I know there are definitely ups and downs for it.
So oh, sorry, Gigi, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I was very nervous about starting a Patreon because there were some other artist friends who were like, oh, you're selling out, or, you know, just had a lot of negative. It really pushed me off for a long time. And then I spoke to somebody who did have a Patreon, and he basically said, the people who want to support you will support you no matter what. And he's like, it's really easy. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You do the work, you put it in. And it made me feel so bad for even feeling ashamed of it for whatever reason. So first of all, if you are feeling like that, don't. It really is nothing. There's nothing shameful about having a Patreon and asking people to support your work. And then number two, the advice that I was given was, you know, when I was like worrying about all these tiers and what to offer and how do I even begin, was again the same thing. Is like some people the dedicated people will join whatever tier you have and literally not expect anything in return. I'll be messaging them every month to ask them, hey, can I get your address? You're in this tier. I would love to send you something. And I would not hear back from anybody. And it really, I mean, at one point I'm a little like, oh, I'm taking their money. I'm not giving them anything else, you know, but then on the other point, it's like, wow, they really just want to support me just because they really believe in my work. And that feels great. So, you know, if you have that feeling of just like being really, you know, too shy or too, you know, or whatever, just, you know, there are people who really want to support you. And it's so hard to overcome that feeling of being, you know, not valuing yourself to believe it. But yeah, it's true. And it really is. And go ahead, Gigi. I'm sorry for.
No, like this is the first time I've ever heard Patreon being put in like the terms of being a sellout. I've heard it be called like a paywall before. Like a lot of people get very irate that you're putting your work behind a paywall. And it's like, I'm still going to give you content. I'm just not going to give you all the content. Like you're not paying me anything, so I'm not going to give you all the content. And that's pretty fair. You know, you have to work to support yourself. And that's been the biggest benefit of Patreon for me, being able to walk away from a full-time job. I used to work as a graphic designer for a local tattoo ink manufacturer. And that eventually stemmed into doing their social media and doing marketing. And even for a small, brief moment, planning a tattoo convention here in Las Vegas, where I had to wrangle a bunch of tattoo artists. And it was just me and my creative team. That was me and like 2 other people and our social media person at the time, and doing tech support and doing a bunch of things that I never ever wanted to do with my life. I was miserable. So Patreon like let me walk away from that, let me find love for myself again, and like find love for my work. So I'm like always immensely grateful to my patrons. And the drawbacks of a Patreon is that it is a full-time job by itself. So it's something that you have to learn to balance with your own social media and growing your own brand and being your own warehouse and fulfillment center and secretary and everything else that you do. Not to mention like human things like eating and sleeping and bathing and all the other nuances of owning a human body. But you know, nonetheless, I love Patreon and I prioritize it above a lot of things that I have to balance, and that includes social media. Like I would rather give them the content than post it to social media any day of the week.
Oh, go ahead, Yoshi.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to like circle back for just a hot second too, but just talking about like when we were talking about commission prices or like pricing your work earlier, I mean, if you are in a position to, I definitely think that it is worth not taking the commission or the job that doesn't pay you anything and instead making art for yourself that you can use to like promote yourself. I mean, by the same example, like, hey, you could do this commission that is like doesn't pay anything, or you could take that time and instead, you know, be making a Patreon and putting like a post on Patreon, and like sort of gathering and gaining that following there. So I think like, I mean, I definitely had that when I was first starting out in freelance. I was fortunate to have like a full-time job at the time that could actually support me financially while I was trying to get work. You know, and during that time, there were jobs that I would get that I was like, this is not worth it. Like, you're not going to give me any respect or money. I'm not going to take this. And instead, you know, made some of my own art and like built up a social media following that way. And then through that actually gained enough momentum to start getting actual real work. And now I'm full-time freelance. So I think, yeah, figuring out your worth there is definitely worth it.
That is like an amazing point. And I think it should be every creator's goal to put yourself in a position where you have the power to say no. You will always come out on top if you have the power to say no. And I didn't realize the power of that until maybe last year after I walked away. Well, after I was let go because of the pandemic from my graphic design position, I was already simultaneously doing Patreon and my own store. And after they had clipped that line for me, I realized that, hey, I'm still floating. I'm not drowning. Like, I guess I can do this on my own. And then anything that came my way where it didn't sound like I was passionate about it, or like I wouldn't like it, or like I wouldn't make any money, I had the power to say no. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I don't have to take this job because my life doesn't depend on it. Like, I'm not gonna like lose my rent or my apartment or wherever I'm living or my food. Or the power to say no is amazing. So that should always be one of your biggest goals as a creator. Put yourself in that position.
I think that's excellent advice. And at that point, we're out of time. So I'd really like if everybody could say their names again and where people can find you, or maybe like what your favorite piece of merch is that you've made and how everybody can buy it and support you. We can start with Aviva. She's up in the corner.
Oh no, I brought all this merch out onto my desk. I'm like, what's my favorite piece of merch? That's such a big question. What? So again, I'm Aviva Maï Artzy. That's my name is appearing there. And that's also my handle at Aviva Maï Artzy on Twitter, Instagram. On the washi station, thewashystation.com is where you can find all the washi tape that I showed. I am really proud of one of these sticker sheets that I also created for it. Luna, stop it. Which features Luna, the Luna gems. So it's kind of set up to be like a little print too, if you wanted it to be a print, but also it's a sticker sheet with like, I forget how many, 40 or 50 individual little Lunas. And this feels like slightly weird to drop just at the end, but I'm also on OnlyFans, and you would be surprised how many people there are. Like, what? Thank you, Gigi. Yes. You would be surprised how much people are willing to support you across different platforms, even if it goes against what Gigi was saying of always having like a consistent thread within things. There are people who follow me for my artwork, which is very bright and colorful and features a lot of animals. And then there are people who love washi tape, and there are people who follow my OnlyFans, and there are literally people who do all like who have commissioned me and sub monthly and have bought washi tape. I'm like, damn guys, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me on this panel. I'm gonna mute myself, butthole.
Yoshi?
Okay, hi, I'm Yoshi Yoshitani again. And I think the best way to follow me is check out my website, YoshiYoshitani.com. That'll link out to all my social medias. And then my store, which is YoshiYoshitani.store. That's where you can find all my merch. I think the biggest item right now is my Tarot of the Divine, which is a tarot deck where each card is a myth, fairy tale, or folklore from around the world. Very international. I'm multicultural, so I really want to make multicultural art. And yeah, check me out. Thanks.
Gigi?
Hi, I'm Gigi Knight, and you can find me at gigiknight.com. That also links up to all my social media and Patreon and all that other stuff. And I think in terms of like a favorite thing I've made, it's like this really big tarot card that has gold foil on it. I've only ever made one because I'm not ready to do a full deck. I don't have the brain power for 78 illustrations. Yoshi's vehemently asking I do not do it. But yeah, it's huge. It's a print. I love it. And thank you so much for having me on this panel.
And Huda?
Hi, I'm Huda Fahmy, and you can find me on Yes, I'm Hot in This on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my store is yesimhotinthis.com. And I think the thing I'm most proud of right now is the graphic novel that I just finished that's available for pre-order on all anywhere books are sold, and it's called Huda FRU, and it would be great if you guys could support. Thanks for laughing, Gigi.
And Jen?
Yeah, I'm just at Hey Jen Bartel on both Instagram and Twitter. I don't do any other social media except for I signed up for that new Artful app, which I think is cute. I don't know if everyone's checked that out, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
And Sina?
Sina Grace. It's that name on Twitter, Instagram, and all social media, I guess. And I think my favorite thing that I haven't already like shown yet is getting one of my favorite drag queens, Dax exclamation point, to pose for a variant cover. Again, I just like to do weird things that make me happy.
That's amazing.
I'll send you one because I have extras, because that's the other thing. Always plan for extras so you can give them to your friends and be ready for damages and losses and your shipping. Also, this panel was amazing. You're all amazing people, and my heart's really big in a good, healthy way.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming and giving of your time. I really, really appreciate it. I know it's a lot to ask, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from this. So I really appreciate you giving of your time. And I'm going to throw it to Courtney from the museum to talk about our museum stuff, but I really appreciate you guys. Are panelists are free to go. And I really thank you so much. And yeah, thank you.
Laura, it's so good to see you. Thank you for doing this. And I just want to take a minute to say thank you to Julie, who did an incredible job.
And on behalf of the Comic-Con Museum, I just want to say, wow, that was a great discussion. Thank you so much, Aviva, Jen, Gigi, Huda, Sina, and Yoshi for sharing your time and expertise. You're artists and entrepreneurs, and we're so grateful for the information you shared. I'm sure I'm not the only one who was checking out your art during this discussion. Really great. Thank you to our interpreter, Julie Pickering, everyone who joined us. We appreciate each and every one of you and hope that you enjoyed the event today. Thank you to our charter members whose generous support allows us to continue to offer these events virtually. And we will be posting a recording of this panel on our Comic-Con Museum YouTube channel so that you can share it with friends and family that couldn't join us today. Please make sure to subscribe. And also, if you don't already, please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Facebook at the Comic-Con Museum for news and current events and upcoming live stream events. Thank you everyone so much. Have a great weekend and be safe.
Yeah, thank you everyone. The Artistry and Merchandising panel is a production of the Comic-Con Museum, coordinated by me, Laura Jones, with production support from Christine Pasalo-Norland, Terrell Collins, and Adam Neese, who are here but you can't see them. And again, thank you to Julie Pickering for doing such a great job. So thanks everyone and goodbye.